On the day I had dreamed of for years, my college graduation, I should have been smiling. Instead, I stood frozen at the edge of the stage, scanning the audience. The 6 seats meant for my closest friends. 4 were filled with strangers. My sister's friends, laughing like they owned the place. My parents waved at me, oblivious, as my best friend stood outside in the heat, denied entry. The applause felt hollow, my stomach twisted, and right then, under the blinding lights, I decided I wouldn't just walk across that stage. I was going to burn down the illusion my family lived in. I wake up to the muffled sound of my mother's voice drifting up from the kitchen. She's on a video call, her laughter sharp and bright. I know that laugh. It's her show-off laugh. I grab my phone and check the time, remembering that yesterday I got the internship I'd been working toward for 2 years. I expected a celebration, maybe even a small, "we're proud of you" dinner. Instead, I scroll through my family group chat and see only one message from Mom. A link to Sophie's latest theater performance, live-streamed for all the relatives to see. No mention of my news. Walking down the stairs, I pass the hallway where our family photos hang. It's impossible not to notice the difference. Sophie's senior portrait, perfect lighting, expensive frame, hangs in the center. My own college headshot, crooked in a cheap plastic frame, half hidden behind a lamp. I pause for a moment, the faint dust on my photo catching the light, making my face blur even more. My chest tightens, but I push on. That afternoon, while sipping burnt coffee in the campus cafe, I open an email from the registrar's office. Congratulations! Each graduating student will receive 6 guest tickets for commencement. I smile instinctively, already planning which friends to invite. Before I can start sending texts, my phone buzzes with a group message from my mom. She's made a spreadsheet of who will be attending. 4 of my 6 tickets are already reserved for Sophie's friends. Not even close friends of mine, people I've barely spoken to. I sit there staring at the screen, my coffee cooling. It's not even the first time something like this has happened, but the blatant entitlement still shocks me. They didn't ask, they didn't consider, they decided. I tilt my head, imagining you're sitting across from me. If this was your day, your one big moment, and your family gave most of your seats to someone else's friends, what would you say? Would you let it slide? That night, I can't sleep. I end up rummaging through an old box under my bed labeled family stuff. Inside are faded Polaroids, ticket stubs, and birthday cards. Near the bottom, I find a stack of my mom's old journals. The entries from over 20 years ago are shaky, written in blue ink. That's when I read about Sophie's childhood illness, a fever that almost took her life. I'd heard bits of the story before, but here it's raw and desperate. My parents' fear was palpable, their relief when she recovered almost overwhelming. I close the journal and sit back. For the first time, I feel something different, a flicker of understanding. Maybe they've been overprotective, overcompensating ever since. But understanding doesn't erase the sting. It doesn't change the fact that I've been treated like an afterthought for as long as I can remember. I wrap myself in my blanket and let the memories drift in. Sophie, at 13, sneaking me cookies when Mom said no. Sophie, whispering to me before bed, telling me I was smarter than anyone else she knew. I cry quietly into the fabric because I miss that version of us, the one before the world tilted. My phone buzzes again. This time it's a message from Aunt Claire, someone I haven't spoken to in months. It's short and blunt. Emily, I think you should know. Your parents used the college fund Your grandparents left you to pay for Sophie's trip to Europe last summer. I stare at the words until they blur. The Europe trip. The one Mom claimed was a gift from a friend for Sophie's theater troupe. My hands shake as I scroll back through the photos Sophie posted, her smiling in front of the Eiffel Tower, posing at the Colosseum. Part of me wants to confront them right now, to demand answers, but another part knows that would only give them the chance to spin the story, to make me the ungrateful one. Instead, I screenshot the message and store it in a hidden folder on my phone. I picture you again, sitting across from me in the dim light of my room. I'm not ready to use this yet, but one day, I might. I close my eyes, the image of those empty guest seats burning in my mind, and realize something. This graduation won't just be about walking across a stage. It's going to be the moment everything changes. After that night with Aunt Claire's message burning in my phone, I threw myself into work like it was the only thing keeping me upright. If I couldn't win their affection, maybe I could win their respect, or at least the world's. My final semester was crammed with projects, deadlines, and an internship at the local TV station. The newsroom smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet, but I loved every second of it. I pitched stories no one else wanted, covering small community events, interviewing overlooked voices. When my editor told me my feature on the town's immigrant bakery owner had been nominated for Best Student Reporter, I actually laughed out loud. For a second, I felt weightless. A week later, after my segment aired on the student network, Professor Lang stopped me in the hallway. He's the kind of professor who never wastes words. So when he put a hand on my shoulder and said, "You have something rare, Emily. Don't waste it," it stuck with me. I held on to that warmth like a secret, replaying it in my head on the bus ride home. When the awards ceremony came, I sent my parents the date and time, hoping, stupidly, that this might be the moment they showed up just for me. On the day, I scanned the crowd from the stage, but they weren't there. A text came through midway. "Sorry, honey. Sophie's community play is tonight. We promised her we'd be there." My fingers tightened around the small glass plaque in my hand. I smiled for the photographers anyway, because what else could I do? That night, sitting alone in my apartment, I opened my laptop and stared at a blank YouTube page. I don't know what made me click Create Channel, but I typed the name without thinking. Second place daughter. No face, no identifying details, just my voice. I uploaded a video called "When Your Family Has a Favorite, and It's Not You." It was just me, speaking into the mic about the graduation tickets, the photo wall, the years of being overlooked. By the next morning, it had 1,000 views. By the end of the week, 10,000. Comments poured in from strangers who said they'd lived my story, who understood the sting of being invisible in your own home. For the first time, my pain felt useful. And then came the comment that made my stomach drop. From a user named Silent Witness. "I know who you are. I'll see you on your big day." I read it over and over, unsure if it was a threat or a promise. My hands hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't reply. Instead, I closed my laptop, telling myself it was probably nothing. The weeks that followed blurred together in caffeine-fueled haze. My sleep fractured into restless chunks. I skipped meals without realizing. My friends started to notice, but I kept them at arm's length. Every conversation circled back to my family, and I couldn't stand the pity in their eyes. One Friday night, I got a text from Mia, my best friend from freshman year. "Pizza? My treat." For some reason, I said yes. We ended up in our favorite dive, the one with sticky tables and neon signs that flickered in the corner. We split a large pepperoni, laughing about old campus gossip. For a brief moment, I wasn't the second-place daughter. I was just Emily again. But the relief didn't last. The next morning, I was scrolling through the comments on my latest vlog when I froze. A username I recognized, Theater Kid 92, had left a cryptic remark. Funny story. I think I know your sister. I clicked the profile. Photos of Sophie's community play, backstage selfies, group shots where Sophie stood in the middle, beaming. My heart pounded. One of her friends had put the pieces together. Within hours, whispers spread through my inbox, half-formed messages from people who clearly knew both of us. That evening, a new DM appeared. Get ready. The whole family will know the truth soon. No greeting, no signature. Just that. I sat there in the dark, the only light from my laptop screen, and wondered if I'd made a mistake starting the channel. But then I thought about the graduation stage, the 4 stolen tickets, the Europe trip. I thought about my photo on the wall, hidden in the shadows. If they wanted the truth, they'd get it. But it would be on my terms. After the DM warning that my family would soon know everything, I decided hiding wasn't an option anymore. If anything, it made me double down on figuring out who I was outside of them. I signed up for an advanced investigative reporting course and threw myself into learning the craft. While my classmates were chasing easy campus stories, I was tracking public records, digging through archives, and cold-calling sources. The thrill of uncovering something hidden lit me up in a way nothing else had. Professor Lang introduced me to a retired journalist named Harris, who had once worked at the state's biggest paper. He took me out for coffee in a cramped diner, the kind where the waitress calls you Hon and pours refills without asking. He listened to my goals, my fears, even the mess with my family, though I left names out. He leaned back, tapping the table with one finger. The trick, he said, is knowing when to speak and when to save it. Your story has weight. Use it wisely. 2 weeks later, I got an email from a local newspaper editor. They'd stumbled on my vlog and wanted to run an anonymous feature about life as the overlooked child as a part of a human interest series. They promised to change identifying details to keep me safe. My chest tightened as I read the email again and again. This was the validation I'd craved, my experience recognized as something that mattered. That night, I pulled out my journal and started writing to my 16-year-old self. You don't know it yet, but you'll stop waiting for them to see you. One day, you'll see yourself. You'll know you're enough. My hand cramped from writing, but I didn't stop until every thought was out. It felt like reclaiming a part of me that had been pushed into the background for years. Then my phone rang. Sophie's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated before answering. Her voice was tight, controlled. Delete the vlog, Emily. All of it. If you don't... She let the sentence hang in the air, heavy with unspoken threat. My mind spun. Was she protecting herself or someone else? I didn't ask. I just said, I can't do that, and hung up. The next month, I signed a lease on a small one-bedroom apartment across town. The walls were bare, the carpet worn, but it was mine. I set up a desk by the window and launched an online support group for people dealing with family favoritism. It started with a handful of members and grew into hundreds, each sharing their own version of my story. For once, I wasn't just a receiver of empathy. I was giving it. Out of nowhere, I got a LinkedIn message from a marketing manager at a well-known lifestyle brand. They were planning a nationwide campaign on family equality and wanted me, to share my real story. They offered payment, exposure, the works. My first instinct was to say yes, but Harris's words echoed in my mind. Use it wisely. This wasn't just my story anymore. It was tied to people I'd known my whole life. The decision would have to wait. One Saturday, I joined a picnic in the park with some friends from my reporting class. We sprawled on blankets, passing around bags of chips and cold soda. I lay back, staring at the pale blue sky, feeling the warmth on my skin. It was such a simple thing, laughing without glancing over my shoulder. But it felt revolutionary. No one here knew me as Sophie's sister. No one here compared me to anyone. I could breathe. When I got home that evening, an email from the university was waiting in my inbox. Dear Emily, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as the student speaker for this year's commencement ceremony. I read it twice, then a slow, knowing smile spread across my face. This wasn't just a chance to speak. It was a stage. Graduation morning was bright and sharp, the kind of day that felt like it should belong to me. My gown swished around my ankles as I made my way toward the seating area for graduates. From the stage, I could already see the rows of guests behind the rope barrier. My heart sank. Every single one of the seats marked with my name, except for 2, was filled by Sophie's friends. They laughed and waved as if they owned the place. Beyond the rope, my best friend Mia stood with 2 others I'd invited, holding tickets that apparently meant nothing. As I scanned the crowd, my gaze caught on a familiar face in the back row. Mr. Davis, my old high school English teacher. He gave me a subtle nod. A flash of recognition hit me. His username had been Silent Witness. He had been the one leaving those cryptic comments. When my name was called to speak, I walked to the podium, the typed speech trembling in my hand. I glanced at the first line, something about gratitude and family support, and knew I couldn't read it. Not today. Not when the truth was sitting like a stone in my chest. I slipped my phone from my gown pocket, tapped Go Live, and set it on the podium. My voice didn't shake as I said, Today is supposed to be about celebration, but I can't pretend my journey here was supported equally by the people you see behind me. The audience shifted, murmuring. 4 of my 6 seats today were taken from my closest friends and given to my sister's friends, without my consent. That's not just today's problem. That's been my whole life. I spoke for less than 5 minutes, but each word felt like a weight lifted. The chat on my live stream exploded with comments, some cheering, some stunned. When I finished, I simply said, This is my moment, and I won't let it be stolen again. As I stepped back, the big screen above the stage cut to a live feed of the audience. Sophie's face filled the frame, eyes wide, mouth parted in shock. For the first time, I couldn't tell if she was angry or hurt. By the time I left the stage, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Clips of my speech were already flooding TikTok and Twitter. By nightfall, second place daughter was trending. The fallout came fast. My parents sent a single text. We need space. Then nothing. Sophie's social media accounts went dark within hours. Some strangers called me brave. Others called me cruel. The divide was sharp, and I was standing right in the middle of it. 3 days later, an email landed in my inbox from a national talk show. They wanted me and Sophie to appear together, live, to work through our issues. My gut twisted. This wasn't reconciliation. It was spectacle. Still, I read the email twice more, wondering if this was my chance to finally get the whole truth in front of her. One night, unable to sleep, I sat at my desk, staring into the webcam as if you were there. Do you think I crossed a line? I asked softly, my voice almost a whisper. Or did I finally draw one? I didn't know if I was asking you, the audience, or myself. The next morning, as I was making coffee, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. There's something about Sophie you don't know." I set the cup down, heart pounding. I didn't know if it was a threat, a warning, or an invitation. But I knew one thing. Whatever it wasn't over. The days after the message were a blur of interviews I didn't accept, emails I didn't answer, and notifications I muted. I felt wrung out, like I'd been yelling for so long, I'd forgotten what silence sounded like. That's when Mia gently suggested therapy. "Not for them," she said over coffee. "For you." The first session felt strange, like speaking into a void and waiting for it to speak back. My therapist, Dr. Hall, didn't offer quick solutions. Instead, she asked questions that sat in my mind long after I'd left her office. "When you picture yourself as a child," she said once, "what do you want to say to her?" I thought of that 16-year-old version of me and whispered, "You're worth the space you take up." Week by week, I learned to separate who I was from who my parents had told me to be. Forgiveness wasn't immediate, it never is, but I started to understand that letting go of the constant replay of wrongs didn't mean erasing them. It meant refusing to live inside them. One rainy afternoon, the unknown number texted again. This time it wasn't cryptic. Your sister wasn't just favored. She was told her whole life she had to be perfect, so you could follow her example. It broke her. My fingers hovered over the screen. Whoever this was, they weren't guessing. They knew. I stared out the window at the rain streaking the glass, wondering how many years Sophie had been carrying her own version of the weight I thought was mine alone. That night, I pulled out my mother's journals again, this time reading slower. Between entries about Sophie's illness and my early milestones were lines so raw they startled me. I can't lose Sophie. I need her to be strong, so Emily will be strong too. I imagined my mother pressing the pen to paper, thinking she was doing what was best. I wondered if she'd ever realize the pressure could crush, just as easily as it could shape. I sat back on the bed, the journal still open, and typed a short message to Sophie. "We need to talk." My thumb hovered. Then I hit send. 3 days later, we met at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. Sophie looked tired, older somehow, like the weeks since graduation had stretched her thin. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "You think I had it easy?" I took a breath. "Didn't you?" Her eyes softened, but her voice stayed steady. "Every time they told you to be like me, they told me I had to be someone I wasn't. I couldn't fail, Emily. I couldn't even stumble. If I did, it would set a bad example." Something in me shifted. I still felt the sting of all the times she'd been chosen over me. But now there was another layer, an image of her balancing on a tightrope I'd never seen. We talked for 2 hours, trading pieces of the puzzle we'd each been carrying. By the end, we agreed on one thing. We couldn't keep letting our parents define the terms of our relationship. A week later, Sophie called with an idea. "What if we tell the story together?" she said. "Both sides. No villains, no heroes, just the truth." She was talking about a podcast. My instinct was to laugh, but the more she explained, the more it made sense. If we could pull this off, maybe it could help others stuck in the same cycles we'd lived through. We recorded the first episode in my apartment. Halfway through, the mic stand slipped and crashed to the floor, sending both of us into uncontrollable laughter. It felt good, lighter than anything we'd shared in years. The podcast went live under the title Second Place, First Place, and within days, messages poured in from listeners who said they'd played episodes for their siblings, their parents, even their kids. For the first time, Sophie and I weren't standing on opposite sides. One evening, after wrapping an episode, my phone lit up. It was our parents. I stared at the screen, my breath catching. When I answered, my mother's voice was quiet, almost careful. "We need to meet," she said. "One last time, all of us." I looked across at Sophie, who had heard every word. She nodded once, her face unreadable. Whatever came next, we would face it together. The meeting was set for a Sunday afternoon at my parents' house. I hadn't been there since before graduation, and walking up the front steps felt like stepping into a photograph. Familiar, but faded. Sophie was already inside, sitting stiffly on the couch. My parents stood when I entered, my mother twisting a tissue in her hands, my father's jaw set tight. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my mother's voice broke the silence. "We were wrong, Emily. We should have seen you. Really seen you." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "I'm sorry." My father cleared his throat. "We thought we were protecting the family. We thought we were doing what was best." I didn't rush to answer. I'd imagined this moment before, but the reality was messier. "It wasn't just favoritism," I said quietly. "It was years of telling me I didn't measure up. And Sophie," I glanced at her. "It wasn't fair to her either." They both looked at Sophie then, as if seeing her differently for the first time. My mother's next words came slowly. "There's something you should know. Years ago, before you were in high school, your father and I almost divorced. We thought, if we kept Sophie close, if we made her the center, she'd hold the family together." The air seemed to thicken around us. Sophie leaned back, her eyes wide. "You made me the glue?" she said, almost to herself. My father nodded, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "We thought it would keep us from falling apart, but it wasn't fair to either of you." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. There was no undoing the years, no magic erasing the harm. But hearing the truth, even this late, mattered. We talked for hours, about the little moments that had hurt, about the pressure they'd placed on Sophie, about the way silence had built walls between us. Tears came and went. At one point, my mother reached for my hand, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't pull away. As the sun dipped low, I looked over at Sophie. She caught my gaze, and without thinking, I reached out. She took my hand, and we shared a small, tired smile. It wasn't a grand reconciliation, but it was a start. 2 days later, an email landed in my inbox from a documentary director. They'd seen clips of my graduation speech, heard the podcast, and wanted to tell the story, ours, in a feature film. My pulse quickened as I read. This was bigger than I'd imagined. The chance to take what had been so private and painful and turn it into something that might help others. I didn't answer right away. Some stories I was learning needed time before they were ready to be told. Months passed. Life didn't suddenly become easy, but it felt different, lighter, more mine. I graduated and took a job at a regional newspaper, working my way onto the investigative team. My first big series focused on inequality in local schools. And when it won an award, my parents and Sophie were there in the front row, clapping until their hands were red. Sophie found her own path, too. She launched an organization for people who'd grown up with the burden of being the example in their families. Workshops, online forums, support groups. It grew faster than she'd expected. We joked that we'd both turned our pain into paperwork and public speaking. One spring afternoon, I got a call from a conference organizer. They wanted me to give a TED Talk about family dynamics, favoritism, and finding your voice. I said yes before I could overthink it. The day of the talk, I stood backstage, adjusting my mic. My heart pounded. Not from fear, but from the weight of what this meant. When I stepped onto the red circle, the lights felt warm instead of blinding. In the front row sat my parents and Sophie side by side. My mother gave me a small nod. My father smiled. Sophie mouthed, "Go." I spoke for 18 minutes, telling the story without bitterness, focusing on what had changed and what could change for others. I ended with this. Every family has its blind spots. Every person has the right to be seen. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to step into the light yourself. The applause was loud, but it was the quiet afterward that stayed with me. The quiet in my own head. The kind that comes when you know you've said exactly what you needed to say. Afterward, I walked down the side hallway toward the green room. That's when I saw it. A plain white envelope sitting on the table with my name written in unfamiliar handwriting. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 5 words scrawled in black ink. "The story isn't over yet." I looked around, but the hallway was empty. The hum of the audience still drifted from the main hall. I folded the paper and slipped it into my pocket, my mind racing. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it was nothing. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the start of another chapter I hadn't seen coming. Either way, I was ready.